All right, let's talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. It's a name we all know from history class, right? Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War. But what did it actually do? The answer might just surprise you. The story we often hear is that this one document, with a stroke of a pen, freed all the slaves. End of story. But is that really how it went down? Was it that simple? Well, the truth is way more complicated, and honestly, a lot more fascinating. So let's dig in. So to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to go right to the source. We need to look at what Lincoln's order actually said, and maybe more importantly, what it didn't say. Okay, first things first. The Emancipation Proclamation was an official presidential order. Lincoln issued it on January 1st, 1863. And that's a huge distinction because this wasn't some law passed by Congress. Nope, this was a direct command from the commander-in-chief, a strategic move made right in the middle of a brutal war. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the matter. On one hand, the proclamation did declare that enslaved people in the Confederate States, the states actively fighting against the Union, were now free. But, and this is the part that often gets overlooked, it did not free the enslaved people in the border states. We're talking about places like Maryland and Kentucky, states that had slavery but stayed loyal to the Union. That one detail, it changes the entire story. So that raises a big question, right? Why? Why only free some enslaved people and not others? It seems kind of strange. Well, this is where you have to see Lincoln not just as the great emancipator, but as a master wartime strategist. This whole thing was a calculated, high-stakes move. It's so easy to forget this, but when the Civil War first broke out, Lincoln's #1 goal wasn't to end slavery. It was just to preserve the Union. Period. His whole mission was to keep the country from tearing itself apart. But as the war just kept dragging on, his thinking evolved. He realized that slavery wasn't just a moral issue. It was the economic engine powering the Confederate war machine. To win the war, he had to break that engine. And in making that choice, he completely redefined the very meaning of the war. Suddenly, it wasn't just about preserving the Union anymore. It was about forging a new one based on freedom. So Lincoln makes his move. He issues the Emancipation Proclamation. And the impact? Wow. It was immediate and it was profound. It absolutely changed the course of the war. It was a total game changer. For enslaved people, it was this incredible beacon of hope, encouraging thousands to escape to Union lines. For the Confederacy, it was a political disaster on the world stage. It made it almost impossible for countries like Britain or France to support them. And for the Union, it unlocked a massive new source of manpower by officially allowing African-American men to enlist. And they did. Just look at this number, 200,000. That's how many black soldiers and sailors signed up to fight for the Union. Think about that. These men weren't just fighting for a country, they were fighting for their own liberation and the freedom of their families. But as powerful as the proclamation was, and it was, we have to be clear about its limits. It was a wartime tool, not a permanent legal fix for the institution of slavery. So let's just hammer this home. The proclamation didn't touch slavery in those Union border states. And because it was a presidential order, its legal power to end slavery for good everywhere was, questionable at best. To do that, the country was going to need something more. You can really see the path to abolition here. The Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 was like the giant crack in the dam. But it was the 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, that finally broke the dam completely, officially and constitutionally ending slavery in the United States once and for all. So after all that, you might be wondering, okay, if it didn't free everyone, why do we make such a big deal about it? And that's a fair question. The answer is all about its incredible, lasting legacy. The Emancipation Proclamation changed everything. It transformed the very soul of the Civil War, from a conflict about preserving a nation to a crusade for human freedom. It was a monumental step forward that made the 13th Amendment possible. It forced America to start asking itself a hard question. What does freedom really mean, and who is it for? There's a great way to sum it all up. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't end slavery in a single day, but it forever changed the reason for the fight. It wasn't the final chapter, not by a long shot, but it was the critical turning point, the moment the war for the Union truly became a war for freedom. And because of that, it changed the course of American history forever.